Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a very special episode of the podcast because we have my good friend Crystal here today. How's it going,
So
Crystal?
good. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you for being here. And I know we haven't known each other for that long, but we met recently in a women's mentorship group for our businesses. And seeing how you have this incredible background in human design, but you also are creative and artistic, and you have all these other ideas to birth into the world. It's so exciting. I feel like there's so much we have to talk about today. But before we get into all of that, just tell us a little bit more about who you are and who do you serve?
Yeah, thank you. So, my name is Crystal McIntyre. I am an author, illustrator, and human design expert. And there's who I serve. In my human design business, I mostly serve women who are looking to deepen the trust within themselves, looking to expand their awareness through the lens of human design. And in the illustration side, I'm really being called to serve parents and children of like this generation that are really committed to helping their children understand and become aware of themselves on an individual level, their emotions, and how to move through things like that, the importance of community and connection and collaboration, and the importance of sustainability in our world. So, the books that I'm writing are for the parent that is really conscious and looking to raise a child through a new lens.
Very,
Yeah.
very cool. Yeah. And I don't have kids yet. So I never even thought about like, where do my books come from? Where do picture books for kids come from? Which is just like a huge market. And it's so cool how you have this human design business, but then you also have all these other passions and you're trying to nurture them in this new way of basically starting your own publishing house. Is that right?
Eventually, yeah, that's my goal.
Eventually.
One step at a
And
time.
right now, yeah, one step at a time. You're right. There's no rush. And right now, I just read the dummy version of the book that you are writing and illustrating. And how I'm so curious because for a long time I told myself I'm not creative, and now I know that's not true. But I've only recently, like as an adult, started tapping into my creative skills. And so I'm so curious to hear more about your process. Like how do those book ideas come to you? What does your illustration and writing process look like?
Yeah. What a beautiful question. And I love the topic of creativity because so many people think of creativity as being able to paint or being able to play an instrument. But creativity like expresses itself through us in so many ways. So whether that's the clothing that you wear, the food that you make, we have an abundance of ways that we can allow our creativity to be expressed through us. For myself, my journey has been quite interesting. I just about 12 years ago, I got back from a 6-month trip in Asia, and I decided that my best friend that I went with, I was like, I'm going to write us this little book about our adventures. And it was done in crayon, and I couldn't draw people at the time. And so all of the characters were animals. And from there, this passion started growing, and I just started like making these books for my friends. And they were all done in crayon on just printer paper. And I would go to the print shop and I would get them laminated and like ring bound and then I would give them out. And this passion really started to develop, and the stories that I was writing for my friends, they were like cute, but actual stories started coming through. And I joined the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and I went to conferences, and I started taking courses to deepen this. But in all honesty, it's come just from giving myself the space to allow the stories to come through me. I really if you've ever read Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic, she really talks about ideas as being these entities that are just always around us. And when we're open, they drop in because they want to be brought to life. So they're just trying to find someone to bring them to life. And now I'm happy to say my illustrations are not done in crayon anymore. But I'm pretty much completely self-taught in all realms. It it comes from such a deep place in my soul that I know it's my calling. And it's a practice of writing and releasing, because you write something and you think it's the best thing. This is the best line. I'm never going to get rid of it. And then the final product is like you've cut so many things out that were the best line ever. Because at the end of the day, the story that's meant to be told is the one that's meant to be told, and you kind of have to release yourself from the ego of like, no, it has to be this way.
Oh my gosh, there are so many pieces I want you to dig into on that. So the first one, I think, being, you mentioned taking all these workshops, and that is definitely my default mode, is like, oh, I want to learn something, I better sign up for 17 certifications, and then I'm sure I'll be good at it. So you kind of mentioned that, but also this process of creating space. So if someone listening really wants to cultivate their creativity or call that back or connect to it more, what would be some advice you have based on your journey of really stepping into that?
Oh, I love in one of Macklemore's songs, he says, the greats, yeah, right? Um, the greats aren't great because they could paint. The greats are great because they paint a lot. And that was my
Oh
journey.
yeah.
Every night I was just drawing and writing, and my partner at the time he was really getting into DJ. So we would spend hours where he would just be practicing DJing and I would just be creating. And when I look back, the programs, they were okay, but what they actually did was make me feel like I wasn't good enough to continue with my dream. And so it kind of got pushed to the wayside, because I was consistently told like, you can't make money doing this. And it took me time to develop my style, to figure out how to draw people, and to even now, as I'm illustrating my own book, and I have such a collection of picture books. And so I go and I look at them, and it takes me a minute, because I'm like, oh, this is crap. Mine's crap. Like, no one's going to but then I have to come back to myself and just like, it all lives inside of you. And so when you can tap into that place and you can kind of shut everything else out and just allow the creativity to move through you, then you'll be so surprised at what comes out, and just continuing to practice and deepen.
And so one limiting belief that I hear popping up in my head when you say this is something like, but you're not getting anything out of that, right? Because you're almost giving yourself time in the day. It's playtime, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
what it is. It's exploring time, it's experimenting time. And I know me, with my perfectionist and type A background, it's hard to carve out that space for you to just play, to not have a purpose or a checkbox that you're trying to X
Mm.
off. Did you have any of that resistance?
Mm. I think it's like going to the gym. You don't go to the gym one time, and, the first time everyone goes to the gym, I don't think they love it, to be honest. And most
And they probably don't get anything
right?
done.
And most time, it's awkward. You don't know what equipment to use. You don't know if you're doing it right, but you're focused on a longer goal. And ultimately, as adults, we forget how to play. So it feels awkward, and we have to reteach ourselves, and we have to create space for the things. So when you really love something, it becomes easier to create space for that. It's not hard for me to carve out time to sit and create. It's harder for me to carve out time to go to the gym, because that's not where my energy is naturally like, yeah, the gym. And so it's it's looking at those longer term goals, and and knowing that kind of like every thought that comes through can has the potential to be a story. I truly believe we all have at least one story that lives inside of us that can be brought to life. And so that's another thing I'm really creating space for, is to help people bring their stories to life. And I do illustration for other people, and what I'm recognizing is they bring me kind of their either their novel that they want it to be a children's book, or their idea, and together we work to make it into a story that is going to make an impact and isn't just telling. Kids stories should never tell, they should show, and they should um, be fun and playful, even if they have a message.
Mhm. Of course, that's what makes them the most entertaining and the ones that really stick
Yeah.
with you. Yeah. And that was another piece I wanted to ask you about, is this this passion that you have for helping people discover and then tell and
Mhm.
share the story that is inside of them. I would love you to dig more into that idea and maybe even that process.
Yeah. So it's definitely evolving, because I never really, life brings you, as a manifesting generator, life brings me things to respond to. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. So initially I started out saying, I'm illustrating a picture book. And suddenly I had all these people being like, I have a picture book I want you to illustrate. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, send it to me. And what I recognized was um, it had a lot of the stories had really great bones, but they weren't fully formulated. And so I started working with people on that. So there's a couple ways to go about it. Some, like I said, some people have written a story, and from there it's just like kind of editing it and piecing it, shifting things around to make it kind of cohesive. And for other people, it's the process of creating the space to allow the story to come through. And really doing this through one-on-one work, and um, tapping into when you feel the most creative. For some people, for me, it's like the amount of stories I have from where I'm like just about to fall asleep. And then I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like writing down all these stories. For other people, it might be when you're exercising or out in nature. And so it's first recognizing when you feel the most creative and creating space for that, and then allowing a way for these ideas to start coming down. And it's, at first it's like a brain dump. We have so much up there, so it's like getting everything out, just like, okay, these are all the 40 ideas that I have now, which one feels the most alive? And oftentimes it's kind of related to something we've been through in our lives, but the story always wants to come out in a fun and unique way.
Yeah. And what that makes me think of too is a lot of reconnecting to your inner
Mhm.
child. When you said, noticing the times that you are the most creative, I know I've had sessions with my one-on-one clients and asked them like, well, what do you do? What do you do just for fun? What do you do for pleasure, for no purpose? And most people tell me, like, they just kind of stare at me for a little while until they say, nothing, I don't think. And that, if anyone, listening feels a little blocked with their creativity, that can be a really good place to start, of just noticing what kind of space do you give yourself. Like, if you do a 10-minute morning meditation, great, but you're probably going to need a bigger chunk of time, right? I remember like a couple weeks ago, you shared in our group chat that you did like 2 hours of meditating by the river, and you came home with like all these ideas,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Well, and we're conditioned to believe that it's the doing that gets us somewhere. But the doing is irrelevant if the being isn't in alignment. Otherwise, you're just doing to burn yourself out. So if you're not creating space to understand, like, why do I do these things? What do I actually desire to do? What would be fun for me? I think if everyone listening just started implementing like a 3-minute dance party during the day, they would wake up and activate that part inside of themselves. And they would start recognizing that there's so much more to life than the hustle. And time is relative. And so we actually have so much more control over it than we're led to believe. And the more that we can tap in to that space and that understanding, we recognize that the time that we give ourselves for play is actually more important than the time that we give ourselves to do all the chores. And the chores are never ending. So making
Mm,
time for things like play and creativity, and even just taking 10 minutes and thinking like, how does creativity express itself through me? Wow, I love when I get to plate the dinner that I've made. I love to set the dining room table. I love to hang photos. I love to take pictures. There's so, like I said, creativity is just dying to be expressed through us, and it is expressed through us throughout the day. We're just not seeing it as that.
mm, yeah, really, really, really good reminder. I like that. And you mentioned when you're helping people discover and tell their stories, you mentioned that you're a manifesting generator. How does, like, we don't have to do a deep dive on this. I know this is another area of expertise for you. We'll have to do a part two. That's all human
Yes.
design. But how does someone's energy type, at least, because I think most people listening probably know their energy type, how does that affect, or could it affect, like, their process when they're reconnecting with their creativity and this natural playfulness and joy?
Mm. Yeah, I would say it's more connected to your authority and your head center.
Mm.
So when you have the very top triangle, if this center is colored in, it's often yellow if it's colored in. You have this ability to just like sit and things pour out of you. So you can say, okay, Mondays at noon, this is my creative hour, and you'll have an abundance of things to come out. When you have an undefined or open center, so it's white, this is where you're inspired by outside of you. So this is where spending time in nature is really good. Um, Looking through Pinterest, going, if you're interested in writing or illustrating children's books, like spending time at the library or the bookstore, really tapping into getting out your journals and looking at things that you've experienced in your life, and being inspired by it's not necessarily coming from inside of you, it's creating space outside of you for it to drop in. And then your authority is how your soul is guiding you. So it's trusting that the nudges and the ways that you're being called forward, especially when they don't make sense, you never know. And yeah, I mean, aside from energy type or anything, it's just creating that space to be creative.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that definitely makes sense. And yeah, I have a
Yeah.
defined head and ajna center.
Yes.
So I do usually have too many
Yeah.
ideas. And then I'm like, okay, I need to give myself space to feel what is really lighting me
Mhm.
up, not just going for everything. Cause again, that's just another fast track to burnout
Yeah.
for sure.
And that's why the brain dump is so important. When you just like write everything down and get it out so you can see it, there's the things that you actually, cuz when these ideas come and it's like one at a time, it's like, "Oh, cool. Oh, okay, cool. Oh, yeah, that." But when they're all in front of you and you see the magnitude of them, there's some that stand out and you're like, "Okay, yeah, this is the one that I'm being called towards right now. How can I expand on
Mm-hmm.
that?"
And that's where, coming back to your intuition and just some trust in yourself, which those are skills a lot of us turn
Mhm.
down, you know, throughout adolescence, really, and even into adulthood. And that's why those practices can be so helpful too, which we talk a lot about on this podcast. But is there anything you really like to do that you feel like helps you reconnect personally with trust, or even with your intuition if you're feeling a little bit um scattered, or like, I don't know what to do next?
Mm. For me, it's the process of just stopping for a minute and just centering into myself, taking some deep breaths and tapping in. The mind in human design, the mind is never in control. The body knows. The mind is like in the back seat. So the mind is in the back seat. It's not paying attention. It doesn't have a map. And every once in a while, it's like, no, you're going the wrong way. And you're like, wait, what? But it like woke up from a nap to tell you that. It doesn't even know where you are. And your soul has the GPS. So, and the soul lives in the body. So when we can come back to that space, for me as a manifesting generator, it's what would be fun for me right now? And I think most people should just be asking themselves that. What would be just the most fun thing I could do? Even if I only have 5 minutes, what would be fun inside of that 5 minutes? And yeah, I noticed that it's in the times of slowing down, and there was the most inconvenient times. Like I need a pen that you can write on in water. You know, it's like I'm in the bath or I'm in the shower and I get all these ideas. And so it's when you really start to tap in and listen, you'll notice that there's times, for me, it's being around water or being in water, that is when the most ideas come through. And so when you can give yourself that space, because it's not all, even with creativity, if you're only outputting creativity, you get to a point where you run out of things to output. You have to make space for the input to come in.
Mm-hmm. And I have some recommendations for writing in wet environments if you need them. I'll share after the
Yes.
podcast because my husband's very into like prepping and survival, and he has all kinds of water
Oh
resistant
my gosh,
tools. So
amazing.
we'll hook you up. We'll hook you up. But yeah, I really like that. And for those of you who are listening and not watching this on YouTube or something, um, Crystal said most of that like after taking a deep breath and closing her eyes for a minute. And I think that is it's such a simple, beautiful practice that so many of us don't even take time to do that. If like we just think we have to respond, we have to go, we have to do, we have to
Mhm.
act. But even such a simple practice like that, if someone asks you a question, putting a hand on your heart and taking a deep breath or closing your eyes for a minute, like that can be really, really powerful. So I just wanted to highlight that because not everyone can see you.
Yes.
And the other, coming back to your
Mhm.
illustration project. So the other really, really fascinating piece of what you want to do is put effort towards the sustainability of the book publishing, creative children's book
Mhm.
industry. So I really want to dig into this. And my first question, I think, is how unsustainable is at least like the children's book industry right now?
Yeah. I mean, the book industry in general is pretty unsustainable. And picture books are a growing industry, surprisingly. I mean, not surprisingly, not many parents really want their child sitting in front of a screen to read a book. And you know, for myself growing up, like that was such a special time, and that I got to spend with my mom was reading books and my grandma's and my dad. And so you know, I feel like for our generation, that's continuing on. And because now we're so inundated with screens, there's an even bigger push to not have that for for children. So yeah, the picture book industry is not the most, books in general are not the most sustainable. There are now a handful of printing places in the world. And I feel so fortunate that there's one in Vancouver because I live like 45 minutes away. I just went down yesterday and they're family run. They're the largest family run printer in Canada. And their workshop or their like warehouse is built around sustainability. They have sustainable paper. And so as I'm researching all of this, it's it's just so important to me to not feed into the destruction of the planet for something that I believe is so important. It's so important that kids have this time to read these books and to deepen their awareness and to spend time with a loved one and to have it be like a physical thing. And So yeah, that's really it obviously costs more, but at the end of the day, my ultimate goal is not to, I mean, obviously I want to make a lot of money off of this, but it's more important to me that that I'm putting out a product that I can be proud of in 20 years.
Mhm. Mhm. And I love how you corrected yourself right there too, because we should not be ashamed that we want to
Yeah.
roll in the dough. Okay. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Yes, you should make money following your passion and creating these beautiful products. Um, but yeah, you hit on a couple good points there. So, because this is something like honestly, before I met you, I never I think of myself as pretty eco-conscious. I never thought about the books that I consume. And I do have a Kindle, but I like rotate holding books in my hands and
Mhm.
my Kindle because I still love real books. But I have never thought about that. And the way I buy my food is so sustainable. I started buying made in the US clothes. Like my husband's whole business is US manufacturing. And I don't know why. I like never thought of books. And you said there's only a handful of these companies that are making this more sustainable. And when you say that, are we talking mostly about deforestation and like what the types of paper that are used and that sort of thing, or is it multifaceted with the whole process?
Yeah, so the one in Vancouver is um, the sustainability starts like uh, with like the building has sustainable uses sustainable practices, and then there are different levels of the paper. So there's one level where it's FSC, and it's basically that the forest that it comes from is monitored and obviously not like old growth, but it goes even deeper into FSC, and then you can get up to 100% recycled post-consumer content, which is the direction that I am fully going in. And that way it's, you know, it's coming not from new. I mean, essentially at some point it was coming from a tree. And you just kind of, again, it comes back to, we can't do everything. So what can we
It
do?
doesn't
It
have to be
doesn't have to be
perfect.
perfect. Yeah,
Mhm. Mhm. It can just be
exactly.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's oh my gosh, I love this idea so much because every time I really have been trying to get better and better with Amazon purchases and things like that, but anytime I buy a product and it comes with pure trash, like
Yeah.
something however it's created, it's either wrapped in something you can't recycle or it's made out of a lot of parts you can't recycle. I just don't really understand why you would create a product that is mostly
Mhm.
garbage. You know, it's like that old cradle to grave thinking. And I think a lot of sustainability companies are thinking about cradle to
Mhm.
cradle, right? What is this made from? And then how is it all going to be reused
Mhm.
again? So, a beautiful, beautiful idea and something that I encourage everyone to think about in different areas of their life, like this one that I had never thought of. So, I love hearing that. And is your potentially your first project then through your new company going to be your own picture book, the one that I saw the draft of?
Yes.
Can you give a little like
Yeah.
preview of what your book is
Yeah.
about? Yeah.
So my book is called Bear Extraordinaire, and it is about a blind polar bear that sets off from the Arctic because he just believes that there's more to life than the white, even though he's blind. And he ends up meeting an Arctic hare, and the two of them set off on a journey where the Arctic hare describes life to him. And as he heads south, he starts being able to see with his mind. And there's a little surprise at the end. Um, but yeah, it's just, uh, it, it's, it's really, I mean, I don't want to give away the end, but like it's kind of the whole point. It highlights this forest in Canada called the Great Bear Rainforest, which is there's a lot of controversy around because there is a pipeline that wants to be put through, and it's one of the only places in the world where these spirit bears are found, and it's yeah, so it's a very multifaceted book where it deals with, because Wendell is blind, and then it's using just, how he uses his other senses, and then how he finds out he's not actually a polar bear in the end. And yeah. So my ultimate
Yeah.
goal is to always have a page at the end of the book that is like giving you a little bit more information, so that it's not, the story is not
Mm.
about the Great Bear Rainforest, but it was inspired by that when I found out about spirit bears and about what was happening to them.
What are spirit bears?
Spirit bears are white black bears. So they have a genetic mutation
Okay.
that causes them to be like they're like a golden white color. Yeah, and they're only found in this
Okay.
tiny little rainforest in Canada. And I actually saw one, and yeah, they're like my spirit animal, and that's how the story was born. So yeah, spoiler
You saw
alert,
one
he's a
in
spirit bear.
person?
He's not a
Like
polar bear. You can still buy the book.
don't tell your kids until after you read it to them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Did you see one like in person while you were hiking or
Yeah.
something?
And it was so, I
Whoa.
was living in Banff at the time, and it was just on the highway north. And I had just found out about spirit bears, and this story had just been born, and I saw it, and I was like, this can't be. And I like took a picture, and yeah, it was a baby. It was a baby spirit bear. And it was so, oh, they're so beautiful.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. That is a sign if I've ever heard of
Right? I
one.
know.
Uh and I love what I've seen of your book so far. And the other fun part is that it's rhyming the whole
Yeah.
way through, which I had some favorite children's books that didn't rhyme, but I think my most favorite were ones that did rhyme, because then you can catch on and it can be one of those first books that you read and things like
Yeah.
that. So it is a great story. And what is your plan for launching it? Have you decided?
Yeah. I'm going to do a Kickstarter campaign to really promote the sustainability of it, and to build excitement around it, because I'm so excited to bring it to life. And like I said, I wrote this story, or I don't know if I even said, but I wrote the story 10 years ago. And it's been quite a journey to bring it to life now. And over the years, I would sit down and I'd be like, okay, I'm ready to illustrate this story. And it wouldn't come out. And then this year, when I was just like, hey, I'm illustrating this story, it like flowed out effortlessly. And it's like, when it's your time, because everything just seems to be aligning now. And yeah, so I'll be doing a Kickstarter campaign. There'll be lots of freebies added into it, so that, because I also do a lot of other art. And yeah, really excited.
That is amazing. And so this episode will be live in early
Okay.
July. So I think your Kickstarter will be live by then, right?
I believe so. It will definitely be live. I hope it's not over.
Okay.
I'll have to.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Then I'll move it up. Scratch that date.
It will
So
still be
we'll just
available, though. That's the
obviously
beautiful thing. It's
true, of course. Then maybe it'll be like
yes.
live
Yeah.
in the world. Um, and that's perfect. So we'll obviously include all of those links in the show notes so you guys can check out Crystal's art, this book, support this project that I think, oh my gosh, I think this is just so important as a next
Mhm.
layer for us to all just remember our connectedness with the earth. And the story is beautiful as far as the earth and our planet and animals and our connectedness in that regard, but even just us as humans and our true power, right, of voting with our dollars
Mhm.
and using money as an energetic currency that it is to support products, people, projects that we really care about and that are making a
Yes.
difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have other artwork too. You have human design offerings, so many talents. So please share, where can people find you? Where can they connect with you and engage with all of these other resources?
Yeah. So Instagram is where I hang out the most. And in my bio link, I have anything from submitting a picture book that you've written that you want illustrated, working with me on bringing a picture book to life, working with me through the lens of human design. There'll be links to buy this book. There's links to buy my art. Yeah.
Amazing. Perfect. So definitely head over to Crystal's Instagram. She's also been making really beautiful animation reels
Yes.
that are so fun. Oh my gosh. I hope you keep making those, even though I'm sure there are times
Yeah.
suck.
It's like you get like a 30-second video. It's like 4 hours of work.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah.
Yes. Mm.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for teaching us so much about reconnecting with our creativity and telling our stories, and just that really important reminder of how we are all connected and we all can make a huge impact on this
Thank
planet.
you so much for having me. So honored.
Yeah, if you guys like this episode, be sure to share it and tag us, and definitely share the Kickstarter, share the link to the book. Let's support these projects that really matter. So thank you for listening. Bye, guys.